and welcome to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. I'm Laura East. Each episode takes a look at a different aspect of the wonderful world of amateur theatre and features an amateur theatre maker talking about their theatrical life, theatrical loves, and the times when they've died on stage. This month's episode focuses on the Crescent's upcoming pair of productions of two plays, House and Garden, both by Alan Ayckbourn. Both plays open on Saturday the 3rd of February at the Crescent Theatre, Birmingham, and run for 8 performances until Saturday 10th of February. Luke Plimmer is borrowing our backstage pass this month to learn more. He'll be talking to the stage manager Suzie King and to Jordan Starks Browning, who is working on props for both House and Garden. House and Garden's author, Alan Ayckbourn, has written over 80 plays since 1959, and he's particularly known for comedy. We've previously talked about his work in Life in the Fast Lane, the 4th episode of our podcast's first season. His huge back catalogue is very popular with amateur theatre companies and their audiences, and here at the Crescent we've produced at least one Alan Ayckbourn play every decade since the 1970s. According to our archives, we must have a particular soft spot for bedroom farce, season's greetings, relatively speaking, and table manners, all of which we've now produced twice, most recently Table Manners in 2021. For the theatre's centenary season, the Crescent is embracing the unique challenge of Ayckbourn's 54th and 55th plays, House and Garden. One of the things that makes House and Garden an exciting challenge to stage is that Alan Ayckbourn wrote them to be performed together. Characters exit one play to appear at the same moment in another. He had experimented with a similar twist on format before. For example, each of his 3 plays in his Norman Conquests trilogy in 1973 is set in a different room of the house or the garden, on the same days, and features the same 6 characters. Although characters might only react in one play to the events that you actually see on stage in another, all 3 plays make complete sense individually, and they don't have to be performed together. This wouldn't be the only time Alan Ayckbourn experimented with dramatising the same events from different angles. In his 2013 play Arrivals and Departures, the story of the first half and the second half of the play are the same, but each shown from the point of view of a different character. However, in the case of House and Garden, when we say that Ayckbourn wrote them to be performed together, we don't just mean in the same season or on the same day or alternately by the same cast. While they're still separate, so they make total sense on their own, the shared cast performs both plays at exactly the same time to different audiences in different venues. A character leaves the scene, and the actor rushes off to a different theatre space to appear as the same character in another scene in the other play to a completely different audience. When the plays opened in Scarborough in 1999, they would have been running simultaneously in the Stephen Joseph Theatre's larger and smaller auditoriums, the Round and the McCarthy. At the Crescent in Birmingham, the cast dash backstage between House in the main house auditorium and Garden downstairs in the Von Barber studio. Spare a thought for the professional actors in Northampton in 2001, who were performing both shows in completely separate theatre buildings, the next-door neighbours, the Royal and Derngate Theatres. Producing 2 plays of this sort presents a unique and exciting opportunity for the theatre's cast and crew. While Luke talks with members in the stage management and props teams for the shows, I take the opportunity to talk to Naomi Jacobs, the production assistant for Garden. Today I'm joined by Naomi Jacobs. As well as being the production assistant on the Garden half of the Crescent's upcoming shows House and Garden, Naomi is an actor. Crescent theatre audiences may recognise her as Shakespeare's feisty Beatrice or scheming Lady Macbeth, or perhaps playing her own twin brother in One Man, Two Guvnors. You may remember Naomi from our very first podcast episode, Thinking Outside the Box, speaking with John O'Neill and Colin Simmons about the Crescent's rehearsals for Pygmalion in 2021, where Naomi and Colin starred as Eliza Doolittle and Professor Henry Higgins. Naomi, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. Really happy to be here.
So, Naomi, at the moment, you're the production assistant for the Crescent's upcoming production of Alan Ayckbourn's play Garden. Can you tell us a bit about the play?
Right, so Garden was both written and set, I think, in 1999. It's kind of a typical Alan Ayckbourn play in many ways. It's about lots of relationships, It's about humanity. He has this very particular way of conveying humanity, I think. He portrays sort of a very realistic view of human beings as being this mixture of kind of strength and weakness, you know, and always with an element of the kind of pathetic about them, you know, which I think we can all relate to. So there's all of that going on, and Garden is set in the garden of a large country house on the day of a typically English garden fete, basically. And so we've got lots of different characters that come in and out of the garden. Some of them are the people that are putting on the fete, the sort of top organisers of the fete, if you like, and they have a sort of Captain Mannering-like vibe about them, I would say. Certainly the man does anyway. And then we've got the people who own the house and their daughter, and there's lots of relationships going on, mothers, fathers, daughters, sons, marriages, affairs, the whole lot. And then we've got, as well as the family that are in the house and their acquaintances and things, we've also got the servants who come in, the people that work at the house, like the gardener, and the cook and things like that. So we just learn a lot about their relationships, and lots of chaos and mayhem ensues, a huge amount of comedy, and there's some really fantastic, I don't want to give too many spoilers away about Garden, but there's some really fantastic, really fun moments that I absolutely know the audience are going to love. I laugh every time I see them in rehearsal, even though I've seen it a few times now, you know. There's some maypole dancing, there's some Morris dancing, there's a fight, probably giving spoilers away now, but it's well worth seeing, and it's just such a lot of fun and very funny and quite moving at times as well.
Is it set in the 1990s?
It is, yeah. So I think the cast are looking forward to, you know, getting out some of their old wardrobe, probably.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the role of the production assistant on this show and how you got started as a PA?
So this is the only the second time I've been a PA. So I first PA'd for Constellations a few years ago. And yeah, so now I'm the PA for Garden. I suppose I got started just because I was asked. You know, often the Crescent Theatre are looking for people to help backstage. We do so many shows and do so many things. We need lots of help, and sometimes we're even looking for actors as well. You know, sometimes it's a struggle to find them too. So I was asked. I hadn't been to the Crescent for a while. I've been very busy at work, and somebody just said, look, we really need a PA. We'd love you to come back to the Crescent. Would you do it? And so I agreed, and it was a very interesting process. You know, I'd never been that side of the stage before. I'd always sort of just prioritised being on it. But it was great, and sort of a slightly less stressful experience, I suppose. You know, just kind of watching from the sidelines. So the role of a PA, well, it's very varied. You're just a general assistant to the production, really. It is what it says it is, and you do things like you turn up to the auditions, you might help contact people who are successful or not successful at the auditions. You're a kind of mediator sometimes, you know, just someone for the cast to go and speak to about things. You make notes during the rehearsal process as well, so you note down what we call blocking. So you note down whereabouts on the stage the characters are and things like that. And when it gets to the point where the actors are off book, then it's your job to prompt them if someone forgets a line, just to keep the rehearsal going and make it smooth. That's particularly important for House and Garden, because we've come to the point in the rehearsal process where Garden is rehearsing concurrently with House, and we've got to make sure the timings match up. So if we're rehearsing Act 1, Scene 1, for instance, as a prompt, you've got to be pretty on it, because you don't want there to be too lengthy a gap that wouldn't be a gap in the actual thing, because then you're out of sync for all the wrong reasons with House. So it's even more important to be quite on it as a prompt. And then there's all the tea and coffee and things. That's really, really important as a prompt, to make sure there's milk in the fridge and tea and coffee for the cast and things like that, collecting all the programme information. So it's quite varied. There's quite a bit of admin and liaison and things like that, but it's just really great seeing a play evolve from that point of view, and watching a director work is probably my favourite part of it, really.
Yeah, so you're still enjoying all of that?
Yeah, definitely, and it's just fantastic to be a part of something, you know. I think, especially as an actor first and foremost, if I feel too busy to be acting, or just like I can't really cope with the pressure of, you know, a big part, then it's really fantastic to still feel really involved and useful and being able to collaborate on something really amazing. So that's what I really like about being a PA.
You mentioned that you really like watching a director work. What sorts of things are you interested in watching them do? Or is it just how they shape the show, or how they prompt the actors, I suppose?
I think it's just everything. It's hard to pinpoint a particular thing. It's just fascinating watching the process evolve from that point of view. And every director is different. So I've worked with quite a few directors at the Crescent as an actor, but I've never been directed by Graham before, who's directing Garden. So that's also really fantastic.
Graham Braidwood.
Graham Braidwood, the director of Garden. So it's just fantastic to watch sort of when ideas come, you know, and how they deal with difficulties. There are some great challenges in Garden, so I'm quite impressed with the way, you know, Graham and the whole team has sort of managed those, really. It's quite inspiring. I'm hoping to do a little bit of my own directing in May. Well, I will be co-directing scenes from Shaw with Maura Judges. So we're going to do a few scenes from George Bernard Shaw plays. It's partly because the Crescent's in the centenary year, and we've done a lot of George Bernard Shaw over the years, especially in our early days. So it's kind of a homage to Shaw, I suppose. Yeah. So that'll be fun. That's on in May and auditioning in March, if anyone's interested.
It's very exciting. So you've alluded to this a bit already, but Alan Ayckbourn, as you said, designed the pair of plays, House and Garden, so that they could be performed at exactly the same time, which means they share a cast who have to rush between performance spaces. There must be a unique overlap between the two productions. So from the production assistant's point of view, what has that experience been like? And how much does House feel like a separate show?
Yeah, it has been weird and fascinating and really fun. Especially at the beginning, House felt like a completely different show. Yeah. We've just started merging the two shows a little bit and running concurrently more now, but at the beginning of the rehearsal process, for it felt like quite a while, Garden was rehearsing separately to House, and so we would turn up to the theatre on different days, I think even, you know, and just treat our play as a single play, its own entity, which indeed they are. They do work singly as well.
They can be done completely separately, can't they?
Yeah, and you can still follow the story and it's enjoyable, you know. And so, yeah, they work by themselves. And so, you know, Graham was directing Garden, I'm the PA for Garden, and that was kind of it. We just thought about Garden, you know, for many, many weeks. And actually, I've barely seen any House yet because I'm always with Graham in Garden. And even now when we're starting to rehearse at the same time and run acts and scenes concurrently, I still don't feel like I'm part of House in a way because I never get to see it. I'm still in the studio doing Garden, and House are either in the main house or the rehearsal room generally doing their thing. It was funny the other day because I needed to go into House to chat to the co-director, Steph, for House about something, and I walked into the rehearsal room and was greeted by all these, you know, armchairs and tables and stuff, and I thought, that's odd, because our play is about a garden. You know, that's immediately what my brain said to myself, and then I thought, no, this is a whole different play going on in this different room. You sometimes forget, I think, because you're so absorbed with the play that you've kind of committed to. But yeah, it's all one, really, and it's all one cast, and I think the cast are coping admirably with the challenges of that. You know, it's so funny in rehearsal when we're rehearsing Garden, blah, 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 everything's going along swimmingly, and then an actor comes in to do the scene and they haven't been in Garden before. They've been really busy in House. And it's sort of a bit like, I'd almost forgotten you were in it, you know, because some of them only have small scenes in Garden, they're mostly in House, or vice versa. So I look at the actors and I think, gosh, that really must be quite a challenge to you. That must be a little bit disorientating almost.
Because to them it's almost one play because they're having to
and
now
suddenly
do
they've got a different director in front of them, a different PA prompting them, you know, and that must feel a bit odd. I think they're getting used to it now, I guess. But I admire them for coping with that challenge seemingly so well.
Yeah. Do you know how much the directors collaborate on the two?
Yeah, it's been a massive collaborative effort, I think. That's been my highlight of being part of this process, is seeing the Crescent at its collaborative best, basically, because a show is always a collaborative effort. And it's one of the joys of being part of a show is everyone has to work really well together, you know, even when there are challenges. You have to work together to make the show go on at the end of the day. And so House and Garden, because of that added challenge of two shows at once and really connected together, you know, it's been even more amazing to see the collaboration. And it's a big thing when you've got three directors putting on two shows, but they seem to be working amazingly together, and we're doing it, you know, we're at a really good place and we're on soon.
Yes. So it's January now, and they start on the 3rd of February, I believe.
That's right, that's opening night, I think.
Yeah. And it was interesting to hear that it's only sort of around this time that you're bringing the shows together. In my head, they might have been together from the beginning.
Yeah, well, I think there'd been lots of collaboration in terms of talking about it, you know, and the directors definitely being very communicative all the way through. But from my point of view as a PA, it's felt very separate until a few weeks ago.
It's really interesting. And what is the PA's role once the show goes in front of an audience?
So it can vary, I think. One really important thing the PA has to do is organise the cast parties. Do they want an opening night party, a closing night party? And putting that all together. So I'm sure I'll be involved in that. I'm not actually available for every single show, sadly, because of work commitments. But I guess if I was, it would just be being there, really, being a useful presence for the cast and again a liaison between the director and the cast and things like that, tea and coffee, making sure, you know, the risk assessment is sort of taken into account. There's children in this show as well, so, you know, being a teacher, I've sometimes been used as a kind of chaperone, I suppose, in rehearsals, so I guess that will be needed in performance as well. So yeah, I think it varies a lot, and I think as a PA you have to be adaptable and ready for whatever is going to be useful to people. And that's quite an enjoyable part of the role, really, of just saying, no, I'm gonna do whatever is needed.
And do you get a chance to see either play as a member of the audience?
Well, I'm hoping to.
Yes.
I hope this isn't a horrible shock to the directors, but I've actually booked to be a steward for House and then a steward for Garden one night. But I guess if they need me backstage, I might have to swap a duty. But so I'm hoping I will get to see it, definitely, especially House, because I haven't really seen it yet.
And then you'll have that big oh moment when you're watching House. That's what's going on.
Yeah.
Have you learned anything special from working on this particular set of shows?
I think it's just, as I said already, actually, about the collaboration. It's just been so incredible to witness people working so well together. And I guess I've just learned how amazing we are at collaboration at the Crescent. That's what I've learned.
That's lovely. As I mentioned before, Crescent audiences may also recognise you as an actor, with recent roles in Pygmalion, Much Ado About Nothing and Taming of the Shrew. How did you get involved with the theatre?
Well, it was a really great day looking back. I'm like, thank goodness that happened. So basically I was in my second year studying English at the University of Birmingham. I was involved in lots of student guild drama. And one day on Facebook, I noticed that one of my guild drama friends had posted that she'd got a part at the Crescent Theatre, I think, in the Glass Menagerie, I think. And I thought, goodness, if she can do it, maybe I can do it. And I've never heard of this Crescent Theatre. So I went on the website and there was an audition coming up for a Marivaux play called The Dispute. And I thought, that sounds fascinating. It's a fascinating, really funny, quite short restoration comedy. And I thought, I'm going to go for it because this sounds the most incredible place. I can't believe they're holding open auditions, you know, and they've got these amazing spaces and it's going to be great. And I remember my audition day really clearly. I'd never set foot in the building before. I turned up, signed in, and we were taken on the main house stage to do the auditions, I guess. Now looking back, I'm like, well, that must have been because it was a really busy day at the theatre and everywhere else was taken with other rehearsals or hires or things. So that must be what it was. And yes, I was on the main house stage the very first day I turned up doing this audition. And I was so thrilled that Andrew Cowie, the director of The Dispute, offered me a part. And it was the most fun part ever. And I was blown away during the rehearsal process, absolutely blown away by the professionalism of it and the standard of the people I was working with. You know, and as someone who does harbour a kind of a desire to be professional, even though I've avoided it because of the uncertainty of that lifestyle, you know, there is a part of me that wants to just do this all the time. So I was in heaven. Like, it was just absolutely incredible. You know, I was so impressed with the directing, my fellow actors, the smoothness of everyone else who works around you, the costume team, the spaces I got to act in. That show was in the studio. What a lovely, adaptable space that is. You know, people I knew came to see it and really loved it, and they were also blown away by the standard. And I thought, this is a place that I want to spend a lot of time.
And we last spoke about Alan Ayckbourn in our season 1 episode, Life in the Fast Lane. As an actor, what's different about performing in farce or different styles of comedy?
Well, performing in a farce is just the best fun. It really is. And the wonderful thing about that form of comedy is that timing is so vital. Like, it's just not funny if you don't get the timing right. So I remember there was a moment in One Man, Two Governors where a door has to shut at exactly the same time as another opens and I enter, you know. And if I enter too soon and that person sees me, the joke's gone and the play doesn't work. So it's pretty important that happens. And really, there was no other way of doing it other than just kind of sensing when was the right time, because I couldn't really see or hear the other person. So it's
couldn't hear them either.
It's getting into a rhythm with it, I think. So, and I love that about comedy. I absolutely love that. I love trying to make my fellow castmates laugh, because that's the kind of, they're your first test audience in a way, you know, and if you can make them laugh, then you think, okay, maybe this works. And then getting it in front of an audience is just incredible. You know, when they laugh, you think, right, that worked, we did it right. And it's just the best feeling. I absolutely love being in comedies.
And it sounds like you've got some favourite moments like that in Garden as well. You just can't quite tell us about them yet.
Yeah, no, I don't want to ruin it, but you should absolutely go and see it. Yes, it is a little bit farcical. It's definitely crazy. It's chaotic in the best way possible. And there is no way an audience member will leave feeling like they haven't had the best time, because it's just that kind of play. You will be sort of, enjoying it, smiling all the way through. There's always something.
Yeah.
Ayckbourn's writing is ever so good and ever so impressive and just funny all the way through for different reasons.
So, Naomi, tell us about your first love.
I'm afraid I have a few first loves.
Wonderful.
So there's lots of, I think, formative experiences for me in my interest in drama. One of them must have been, although I only have vague memories of it, my brother acting as Macbeth when he was 11 at primary school, and I must have been 8 or something. And I did go and watch it, and I have vague memories of it. My mum tells the story in quite an amusing way, because at that age, at the age of 10 or 11, there's often quite a vast difference in height between boys and girls. Yeah. So my brother, a normal boy of 11, fairly short, had this Lady Macbeth, who was this already very tall 11-year-old girl.
Yeah.
So that image is hilarious to me. Like, I'm sure I didn't get the significance when I was 8, but looking back now and hearing my mum tell that story, I think that must be that's genius casting from the primary school teacher there. And then I remember liking Shakespeare at school, but I didn't really fully like it until my mum brought me a DVD of Trevor Nunn's production from the 70s of Macbeth again. Lady Macbeth was played by Judi Dench, and then Ian McKellen was the lead. And I just absolutely loved it. I thought, this is the most fantastic play. This is the most brilliant production. It was so sparsely done. It was literally just no set, just a light, and all the actors were basically in black. But I love it as a production. I think it's absolutely really exciting. And so another instance of Macbeth being quite formative. And then the first time I went to the Royal Shakespeare Company was a really, really exciting and pivotal moment for me, I think, in my interest in theatre and my desire to be an actor. So my parents took me to see The Taming of the Shrew in 2008. I think I was 15, and it was the most brilliant, lively, vigorous production. The actors were so talented, multi-talented as well. Like the guy playing Petruchio was also playing the guitar, and it was just, they just went for it with such an amazing energy, and they didn't shy away from the difficult moments in that play. They just went for it. And then there was this fantastic moment at the end where all the actors had disappeared, and a real life van reversed onto the stage, and the back doors opened and the car shoved Petruchio out. And he was in his boxer shorts as well. I think he was actually called Stephen Boxer. I think he was playing Petruchio. And that was such an amazing way of dealing with it. Yeah. So they'd just gone with the whole misogyny of it, and Petruchio being so nasty, really fully all the way through. And it was only until that final image that they added after all the words, and I just thought, this is fantastic. I want to do that sort of acting, that sort of just 100% commitment and such energy and such life. I want to do that. So that was fantastic.
Tell us about the one that got away.
Do you know what? I really don't have a one that got away particularly. I very much take each audition notice as it comes and think, do I want to be in it? Do I not? Yeah. Am I interested in this play or not? And and then just go for it and whatever, see what happens. Having said that, there are plays which I think I'm now potentially getting too old for, that I would like to do. And it's so funny because 10 years ago, the world's your oyster, isn't it? When you're young, you just think, well, I can play all the young parts now, and when I'm older I can play all those parts, and you just think I could do everything. But of course it gets to the point where you've lost out, and I remember seeing Hedda Gabler at the cinema, one of the National Theatre live stream productions, quite a few years ago now, I think with Ruth Wilson. It was really good, and I did sit there thinking I would love to play that role. I'd really love to be Hedda Gabler, but I don't really know how old she's supposed to be, and I'm probably, maybe I'm probably not suitable anymore.
Probably play her between like 25 and 45, I reckon.
Do you reckon?
So
well, then I'm still in with a chance then, Laura.
Tell us about a time when you died on stage.
Okay, so there's been quite a few moments where I've fallen over on stage to start with. There was one moment in Henry V where I was supposed to run and then kneel under some stairs which had been built on the stage. And I ran, slipped under the stairs and just kind of slid along the floor and just lay on the floor under the stairs thinking that wasn't quite how I was supposed to exit that scene, but never mind, I'll just stay still now, And my friend had come to see me, and I remember she said afterwards, or I said, did you see me, slip under the stairs? That wasn't supposed to happen. And she was like, yeah, I guess that wasn't supposed to happen.
Who were you playing in that?
I was playing,
at that point.
I was playing the boy in Henry V, and I also played Princess Catherine in that play, which was really great. But there's one show where there were many, many incidents that happened all in the same show, and that was Sense and Sensibility, the tour.
Really?
So there was one scene, I was playing Eleanor, and there was one very serious scene between Eleanor and Edward. And if people know Sense and Sensibility, essentially it's a very strained relationship because they love each other, but they can't be together for various reasons. And they're very moral people, so they don't want to do anything wrong. And so we had this very tense scene where we love each other, but we can't say. Yeah. And because it's all acting outdoors for the tour, there were some sheep in a neighbouring field. And they started bleating ridiculously loudly and incessantly. It was like they were mating or something, you know. It was quite in your face,
properly
bleating.
Loud.
Yeah, properly loud. And the audience started laughing because the contrast between this serious scene set in the 1800s, written by Jane Austen, and these sheep bleating, getting up to goodness knows what, was so funny. And I just looked at my fellow actor, and we both were trying so hard not to laugh, but we were practically grinning at each other. We just couldn't help it. So there was that moment. And then there was one moment, I think in that same production, where, again, it was right near the end in a really tense moment, where I'm just about to find out that Edward loves me and he's free to be with me, right near the end. I've given a spoiler away now if anyone hasn't read the book. And I felt a big bee right near my neck, and I could feel, you know, when you can feel its fluffiness as well as hear it, and I was like, I'm not happy about that. And I was trying desperately to concentrate on Edward's speech, but I just couldn't. And this was done, I think, at Blakesley Hall, where there's lots of lavender and lots of bees. So it wasn't really a surprise that that had happened. And I thought, what am I going to do? Because I don't want to just leave this bee on my neck. So I thought, what if I just try and surreptitiously wipe it away with my hand like that? So I tried, but I just heard it even louder right by my ear. Oh, no. So then I just started basically, Laura, whacking my neck over and over again in front of the audience, right in the middle of this, you know, serious climactic moment of the play. And I thought, I've just completely ruined it here, but, you know, what could I do?
Yeah. Did your co-star have any idea what was going on?
No, I had to tell everyone afterwards why I was slapping my neck. And I was in hysterics when I came off stage after. I just thought it was really hilarious, you know, it was really funny, but I've never been so unprofessional until that moment. And then finally, also on Sense and Sensibility, there was a really funny moment where a fellow actor made a little mistake. So there's a villain in Sense and Sensibility, Mr. Willoughby, who appears to be quite a charming chap, and he comes into the story when Marianne, Eleanor's sister, has fallen over on the Devonshire hills, I think, and in comes Mr. Willoughby on his horse and sweeps her up in his arms and carries her home, and that's where the family meet him, you see, and get involved in him, and Marianne falls in love with him and everything. And during the scene where he's arrived back and he's laid her on the bed and everything, he has a line which is, I took her up and carried her down the hill, but she's hurt her ankle, it was something like that. And instead of saying that, he said, I picked her up by the ankle and carried her down the hill. And I could not keep a straight face. No. I do pride myself on being as professional as I can, but I absolutely could not keep a straight face in that moment, especially when I saw that the front row had heard that and had, you know, sussed that that's not the line. Yeah. And found it really funny too. And so I genuinely was like laughing, but trying to keep control of myself as much as possible. But that was such a funny moment, and we did grill him quite mercilessly for that line afterwards. So that was a funny show. In that, there were lots of incidents.
I can share one of my favourite moments because I saw that one in the audience as well. And at Blakesley Hall, you had an ice cream van constantly going round while you were trying to do the show. And I couldn't believe how well the whole cast was able to ignore it. Yeah. And then you get to like emotional crescendo and then a plane would go overhead. You're like, oh my God.
Yes, I know. But that's why I love doing the tour. I love the challenge of that, you know, really trying to tell the story and get the audience to be absorbed in it, despite all the distractions that inevitably happen when you're outdoors.
I think it's another thing that brings them on side as well. They're like, I'm rooting for these actors now to get through this despite that ice cream van, despite those sheep.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a good vibe on tour. I love acting outdoors for that reason, really.
Yeah. So a few more questions for you, Naomi, if you don't mind.
Great.
One or the other, as quick as you like. You don't need to explain yourself even.
I'm a chatterbox, but
if you want, we'll see how we go.
Okay.
On stage or backstage?
On stage.
Studio or main stage?
Studio.
Act or direct?
Act, although I'm directing soon, so I probably shouldn't say that. Act, though.
Rehearsal or performance?
Performance.
Tech or dress?
Tech.
Ah. Sing or dance?
Dance.
Hair or makeup?
I hate both. Yeah, it's not a highlight for me having to do my hair and makeup. What should I say? Makeup.
Modern or period?
Period.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Set or props?
Props.
And Shakespeare or Sondheim?
I've got to say Shakespeare.
I was going to say that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Well, Naomi, thank you for joining us. We hope Garden goes well.
Thank you.
I was talking there to Naomi Jacobs, who's working as a production assistant on the upcoming show Garden. Now, to hear more about what it takes to bring the shows together, let's follow Luke Plimmer backstage to talk to our members working in stage management and props for House and Garden.
We're very excited about the backstage pass holders for this episode. We have Suzie King, who is stage managing Garden, and also we're going to be speaking to Jordan Starks-Browning, who is doing the props for both House and Garden. So, both of you are very, very hard at work on the Crescent's upcoming production of Alan Ayckbourn's House and Garden. Can either of you tell us a bit more about what it's about?
So House and Garden are two plays that take place simultaneously, one inside the house, one in the garden, during a summer fete. There's a lot of different stories of relationships and a lot of things going on in both places. You have the story of a famous movie star who's come to open the fete. You also have the dynamics of the families in and outside the house and lots of shenanigans going on, stuff like that.
So, Suzie, have you got anything to add about what the play might be about?
So it's interesting because my perspective as stage manager means that I come to the play a lot later in this environment. In a professional environment, a stage manager would be involved a lot earlier. But I've been heavily involved with Garden rather than House, so sure. I've only got kind of one perspective. But it's funny, it's farcical, it's domestic, it's very prop heavy and set dependent. So when I've sort of started coming to rehearsals, it's kind of like you've got to imagine they're in a tent there, or they're playing hoopla, or whatever it may be. So there are some very interesting things to contend with as a stage manager. Obviously kind of following on from what the rest of the team has already started.
So Jordan, you're working on props. So what do you enjoy about working on props?
I like props as a production element of a play. It's a nice way to be able to work quite closely with the actors and the director. You get to spend quite a lot of time with the members of the cast and the other members of production. I also really like just how much it can help to build the atmosphere and like the feeling of being in a particular time period or in a particular place. You can get a lot of really great moments of atmosphere and of world building just from finding the right prop, and that can be a really cool moment to experience from the production side.
And because some listeners might not know, when are the shows actually set?
So they are set in the late 90s. So it's been really interesting having to, as a young millennial, having to differentiate in my head late 90s versus early noughties, which to me all kind of blur together, but obviously very different periods of time. So it's been really cool to do research into the kind of objects that might be around the house, that particularly things like glassware and furnishings and furniture to a lesser extent, the kind of things that you would have in this kind of house and garden in the 90s, which is really cool. It's really enjoyable.
So are there any interesting or unusual props apart from what you've mentioned? Are there any other interesting or unusual props that you've had to source out for the shows maybe?
So something that has been really cool about this play is there's quite a lot of fake food, which is really fun to make because you obviously have to make it look as realistic and as delicious and edible as possible without using any ingredients that will go off or will degrade over the course of the play. So we have some vol au vents, which my props partner and fiance has made out of sponges and shaving foam, which is very cool. They look absolutely spectacular, and you would never know that they were fake. And we're also making some Rice Krispie treats and chocolate cornflake cakes out of PVA glue and brown paint, which is really cool. So that's like the kind of problem solving that I think is kind of the most fun with props, is trying to find something that looks realistic without using any of its actual ingredients.
But it's those kind of stories, as you say with PVA glue, it's those kind of stories that become famous, and you look back and you look back in amazement at like, oh wow, it's just so. So Suzie, you're stage managing Garden. So what do you enjoy about working on stage management?
So I've
I've got a bit of a background in doing various different kind of theatre bits in the amateur world, and came to the Crescent wanting to know and learn a bit more about stage management. And the other stage manager on House, Paul, he is the person who I've learned a lot from, as well as other fantastic members at the Crescent. And slowly and surely, I've kind of moved from ASM to somebody who can stage manage by themselves in the studio. And I really enjoy it because I definitely consider myself a creative person, but I'm also a very organised person.
Nice.
And, I liked things to be quite methodical. And I think stage management really brings some of those things together. It's really exciting to kind of come to the production as it's already kind of a lot of the creative decisions have been made, and bring together and communicate with director, lighting designer, sound designer, and then kind of become the person who is actually in charge of the production during the kind of tech weeks and performance weeks. And it becomes very methodical and repetitive, whilst also having to kind of respond. And as much as kind of the earlier creative processes are kind of, they can be adapted and changed and tweaked, it's kind of when stage management becomes involved, it's more like, that person hasn't been able to enter stage on time, or that prop is not supposed to do that, and it can have a bit more of a significant impact on kind of the outcome of the performance.
Sure.
So there are some high stakes. I'm not saying it's the only place that there are high stakes, of course not, but it's, it is quite exacting, but I enjoy that challenge. It's an exciting challenge, and knowing that Paul was already going to be the stage manager on House, I was really keen as quickly as possible to become and be selected as stage manager for Garden, because I wanted to be involved with that challenge. I thought it was kind of the next stage in my learning process as a stage manager. So there are a number of challenges, and it's, not least because the cast have to be running between two different venues. And obviously Alan Ayckbourn did not design that around the Crescent itself. So there's been a lot of timing things that we have to consider. And Paul and I will have to be communicating quite readily between the two venues to make sure that we're starting at exactly the right time. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're starting at the exact same time, because there are some kind of things that we've had to take into account where there's an extra staircase that somebody has to run down, and they have to actually get into quite a complicated costume potentially. So there's a chance that we may need to start certain scenes earlier or later than House. And if there are any problems, then we have various things that we can do that means that we can delay the starting of a scene, which is not something you would ordinarily have to do or account for, because the actors are just waiting to come back on stage. Obviously there can be exceptional things to happen, but this is not exceptional. This is going to be happening every day. So we will have a number of different devices and headsets and radios that mean that we can communicate with different people, because I will have a number of ASMs as well because of the amount of props that are in Garden. I thought I had the easier ride being in the studio in the smaller space, but it is not that at all. It is a very prop and set heavy play. So I will be communicating with various different people across various different channels, which is going to be exciting and challenging at the same time.
What's the tech rehearsal going to be like?
Long.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, we might not know at this point in time. Is there anything specific that's going to have to be done differently to that? Because for those that aren't in the know, you have the tech rehearsals about a week or so before you open, and that's the long rehearsal where you go through all the lighting cues and the sound cues and everything. So this is obviously going to be a different ball game. So how's that going to work?
So we're very lucky that obviously, because we are the Crescent company in the Crescent Theatre, we've been able to kind of put it into the calendar that we have the spaces for a little bit longer than usual. So ordinarily, a tech week, it would be 1 week prior to performance. So we would kind of be getting in all of that means kind of bringing all the set and the props into the space on the Sunday, and then opening the following Saturday, having done tech and dress rehearsals throughout the week. We've actually got 2 weeks to do that now, so that makes it a lot easier. We've very, carefully scheduled in pre-tech rehearsals, tech rehearsals, dress rehearsals, runs in between that, and the actors have actually been able to do quite a few runs in the spaces as well. So it looks like it's going to be okay. You know, there will inevitably be some stumbling blocks that we need to get over when we are doing those tech rehearsals. But it looks to be that actually, because House is not going to be too technically difficult, in comparison to Garden at least, there's, you know, communication should be okay. But it will require both Paul and I being absolutely certain what channels we are on at the right time, so that when I'm giving my calls to my, you know, lighting and sound operators, I'm not actually just giving them to just Paul in House.
Sure,
who definitely doesn't want to be overhearing what's going on in Garden. So it will be kind of juggling a couple of plates, but we have got a lot of kind of practice rehearsals to make sure that we kind of get that as slick as possible.
Nice, thank you. So we're going to do our backstage binary question. So we'll take it in turns. I'll go to you first, Suzie, and then I'll go to you, Jordan, after that. So Suzie, on stage or backstage?
Backstage.
Jordan, studio or main stage?
Main stage.
Act or direct?
Ooh, act.
Lighting or sound?
Sound.
Rehearsal or performance?
Performance.
Tech or dress?
Dress.
Sing or dance?
Dance.
Hair or makeup?
Makeup.
Modern or period?
Period.
Comedy or tragedy?
Comedy.
Set or props?
Set.
Shakespeare or Sondheim?
Sondheim.
No.
Set, not props. Causing a bit of rivalry there, are we?
Wow, I see how it is.
Yeah, I mean, you said you'd want to direct. Have you had any experience with that before, or is that just something you'd love to do in the future?
I think I'd be interested to do it, because I think I'm probably going to get some stick for this, but I think sometimes directors can be like, from a stage manager perspective, a little bit like wishy-washy. Okay. And you're kind of like, no, I want hard and fast answers. Where are they standing? Okay. But I think actually, you know, I'm an English teacher as well, so I love kind of picking apart language and things. So I think it would be really, and I always love to encourage my students to think about plays as performance pieces and not just reading it on the page. So I think it would be really interesting to see how that translates into kind of engage in conversation in a kind of rehearsal and development phase.
Well, it's been an absolute delight to talk to both of you, and I can't wait for House and Garden. I can't wait to experience both of them. I can't wait to see how we pull it off. It's going to be wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, thank you both very much for coming onto the podcast. It's been an absolute delight to talk to both of you, and I can't wait to see how the Crescent pull off House and Garden, coming very, very soon. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for listening to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, including our previous episodes, make sure you subscribe at podcast.crescent-theatre.co.uk or via Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get the next episode. You can find out more about the Crescent Theatre Birmingham and our upcoming productions, including House and Garden, by visiting www.crescent-theatre.co.uk or by following us on social media.
Amateur of Life and Death is a Crescent Theatre production. This episode was researched and presented by Laura East and Luke Plimmer. The music is by Brendan Stanley and the podcast is edited by Kevin Middleton.